Got my cigarette ready. Got my coffee. Alright, let's fucking do this. A single jewel pinned to a velvet cloak. The finest dress made of the most costly wool of fabric. A matrimony where the light doesn't just hit the surface, but seems to get trapped inside it. Nude baby Jesus reaching for a peach. In the 15th century, the world began to shrink, but not in size, in focus. While the Italian Renaissance were busy building their Legos, the artists of the North were looking at the dust on the windowsill, the stubble on the merchant's chin, the subtle yet natural way light refracts through water. This obsessive, almost manic attention to detail is often dismissed as mere realism. But for the artists of this time, these details were of survival. By a world being rapidly reshaped by the rise of the merchant class and the decline of feudal certainties, seeing the microscopic became a way for them to find an anchor. Perhaps if you could capture the world with enough clarity, you could finally see your own place within it. This is how the Northern Renaissance formed a blueprint for attention and invented the individual. Nowhere is this tension more jarring than in the works of John Fouquet. Fouquet? I won't even try to pronounce these names correctly. Probably the most fascinating paintings I saw and my personal favorite artist of this time. In the Maloon's diptych, we see the individual's inevitable conflict of the internal and external. On one panel, these fine gentlemen and their totally trendy haircuts are rendered with such physical honesty. You can see the weight of their age, the texture on their skin, the specific gravity of someone who has navigated the dangerous waters of the French court. But when you move to the right, the world shatters. The Virgin Mary is shown as a marble statue that came to life surrounded by a flock of cherubim angels that are unnaturally and aggressively red and blue. To me, it is a masterful depiction of the uncanny. But why does Fouquet disconnect? He understood that our internal lives are exactly like this diptych. On one half, you're grounded in the here and now. The wrinkles, the money, the politics, and on the other half, you're reaching for this absurd, an idealized version of the truth. Playing with gossip here, painting the king's mistress as the Madonna in Child. This wasn't just Fouquet being cheeky or a little scandalous. He was showing us how the holy is always filtered by a very human but also a very messy lens of reality. But Fouquet was a second generation artist. They were particularly inspired by the first generation, and we can't talk about them without mentioning John van Eyck's. Look at the Arnolfini portrait, arguably one of the most analyzed 33 inches of wood in history. For a long time, we have come to view this through a lens of consumption. A wealthy Italian merchant, Giovanni Arnolfini, showing off his bourgeois oranges and his Pharrell hat. But the true story of this painting is not within the wealth, but in the witness. Van Eyck writes, just above the convex mirror, John van Eyck was here. It's a legalistic statement. He did in fact paint this portrait, a proof of his authorship, but maybe it was also a philosophical one. In the North, the artist was no longer this anonymous servant of the church. They were becoming observers. Oil paint was being developed, and it allowed for artists to paint in this technique called glazing, building up layers that gradually invited our eyes to linger. To say I was here is to say I observed this. For Van Eyck and the Northern artists, painting in minute details was a way of loving the world. The signature was no mere boast. It's an account of the artist's physical and mental presence during the hours of labor spent layering paint to capture the light on a chandelier or the texture of a dog's fur. Van Eyck was often regarded as a wizard, for his magic was in creating a new kind of space. This is an insertion of vision. Van Eyck, much like the artist's birth into this era, is finding his place within a convoluted, changing landscape. He is no longer just a bystander, but an artist through which reality can be filtered and imagined. Which brings me to the three words out of the 32 pages I read that stuck with me: as I can. Written in Latin, in a portrait of another merchant, who would have figured, seems at first glance just Van Eyck being, a little silly guy. But sitting more with the works of this period, the motto started feeling a little more like an admission of human frailty. To paint as I can is to acknowledge that there is a limit to what the human eye and hand can capture or execute. This is to me what probably defines this era. Central irony of the Northern Renaissance, that the more perfect the painting looked, the more it highlighted the gap between the viewer and the infinite. These artists weren't just egotistical, claiming to be the gods of art, they were just trying to see the world as God might see it, where every single hair is counted, where every layer of stone on the town hall is seen through a window, while knowing they were only men. The Northern Renaissance matters because it shifted this focus of art from the ideal to the particular. It taught us that the road to the universal runs through the specific. When we look at these works today, we aren't just looking at dead merchants or forgotten saints. We are looking at the first moments of the modern self, an individual who realized that the world is complex, changing, but beautiful, and the only way to understand it is to observe it as best as we can.